Played in difficult circumstances, Reece. How big a display of character was that?
No, I told you, we had to, accept what went on earlier on in the week and, put it behind us. We came here with a game plan. We know we can, what level we can perform at when we're, all together and all firing. The first half we made, a slight error for their goal. But second half, as the game went on, we grew into the game. We knew a chance would come and, this guy took his chance when it came.
Enzo, you did take the chance. Just tell us, at the end of a difficult week, what that goal meant.
Yeah, difficult win for us. Difficult moment, but part of the life and the football. Today we are effort 100%. I'm happy for the team.
You mentioned the game plan in your first answer, Reece. Just tell us about that game plan, who came up with it, and how it seemed to evolve at half-time and then during the course of the second half.
No, I mean, it was, first of all, credit to the staff that stepped up. They haven't been in this role before. To come to City away, as your first game, first team game, is difficult. We had to, adapt fast. The first half, we felt they had too much of the ball. We had to make slight adjustments. In the second half, we came out, with a slightly different plan. As the game went on, as I said, we grew into it.
Yeah, could you just tell us about the role of senior players? You spoke about your role before the game in terms of bringing the group together. I noticed that Cucurella, Caicedo, a couple of the other senior players who were out injured or suspended, those guys were on the bench as well. They travelled with the team, so that looked like a real display of unity from all of you.
Yeah, no, as I said, we're in the difficult moment. We have to stand together, stand as a unit. We are one. There's many people that, travelled today that, we missed. But so many other players stepped up, and this is what we need. We fought as a team today, and I'm proud of the boys.
Reece James talking about pride in his Chelsea team. He kind of echoed what you said there, Glenn. We knew a chance would come.
Yeah, they did. They grew in the game in the second half. And I think a lot of that was down to City, actually, the way they played. But you've got to give credit to Chelsea. I thought their subs worked. And I think the manager for the day, if you like, Calum, should be patted on the back with the slight change. He allowed Enzo to go a little bit more further forward and play with a three in midfield and let him go a lot more attacking than he did in the first half. But he's done that for Chelsea. He'd done that many times against Paris Saint-Germain when they won the Club World Cup. They played in that position and he closes people down in that position, but he actually gets into the box and does what he did in the end and gets the goal. So there's a lot of things. Delap did well, so the shape was good, what they did at half-time, and then the individuals did well that went on from the bench. And that, from any manager, it doesn't matter if it's your first game or your 100th game, that's what you need from your bench. And I think the change at half-time, I think it was more an emphasis. We're going to go out there and play our football. We've defended well. They've gone 1-0 up. We haven't conceded the second, but it worked well defensively. You could see how they'd worked as a defensive unit. But when they had the ball first half, there was no cohesion. There was no real threat to the goal at City. So second half, you've got to give them a lot of credit.
Yeah, you described the goal already. Let's take a closer look at it. And Jolien, perhaps get your thoughts on what Chelsea do well and what City could have done better.
Well, Chelsea got the ball wide and created a 1v1 and did well, exceptionally well, runners off the ball. But from a City perspective, like Chelsea did in the first half, adapt to a back five, a back six even. And could the first person engaging Gustavo, could that have been Daku rather than be so narrow? And then as soon as he's back past that first line of the defence, all of a sudden you're crossing it and everyone's running back towards their goal. So even if City do get the first touch, it's hard to defend because it's going towards your goal. And they've been slightly fortunate here with this outcome. But listen, you can't take nothing away from Chelsea.
I think that's the goal is an example of what I said earlier on, where City, they don't close games out. And that comes from their philosophy. That comes from the manager. They could have easily kept the back four intact in overtime. They've got, 6 or 7 minutes. Back four, two full-backs, don't you dare go over the halfway line. Wingers come back, and it would have been the winger that was going out to Gusto. So at the end of the day, they would have had cover in there. That's not the City way. But if you want to see a game out, because you could smell Chelsea were dangerous second half. They were always looking to be on the break, and they got themselves in some really good positions. So they could have closed the game out quite easily, City, and got the 3 points. And I think that's something that they have to sort of have a little look at.
Yeah, it is the first time since August that they failed to win in successive league matches. Manchester City, you could see the reaction on the face. You could see the disappointment on the faces of the players. Even Pep, they were quite glum after. How damaging do you think this is?
Yeah, it's damaging. And it's always worse, especially when you concede in extra time, injury time. So it would feel a lot worse than probably it potentially is towards the end of the season. But they'll know, Arsenal winning yesterday, they needed to keep momentum going and use this opportunity to get closer and not consider the Sunderland result a negative. But now 2 back-to-back draws isn't great. But there's still opportunities to claw some points back. They'll have to now gain a level of confidence and momentum that they can't afford to drop points again before Arsenal do.
Yeah, and you both said it at half-time, the fact that, it is only 1-0. They need to get a second goal pretty soon. When you consider how dominant they were, just looking at some of the numbers during that interview, in every single metric, City dominated this game, except for where it really counted.
Yeah, I think second half was a strange performance for me. Normally, they weren't the normal City that were really penning Chelsea in, and Chelsea couldn't get out and the ball was coming back again. They were far too open, and it looked like a team that was, can I say, like 3-0 up. And they were 3-0 up and they were just keeping the ball, waiting to get that fourth goal. It looked like a team that thought, but no, it was 1-0 and Chelsea were growing in the game. And nobody really sensed that danger in many ways. And I wasn't surprised when Chelsea scored, to be honest. So I think there's some learning curves there for City. If they're going to be consistent, which they have been on this run, there is a time. Look, everyone wants to see creative football, but there's a time to tuck the belt in and become really tight for 6 minutes. And they win that game. And that's the difference, maybe, of putting the pressure on. Now, Arsenal, you've released the pressure a little bit on Arsenal. They can afford to drop a few points here and there, and they're still going to be in pole position.
Was late drama at the Etihad Stadium.
Bernardo, another draw. I imagine that is incredibly frustrating, a bit of a sucker punch.
Yeah, definitely, especially conceding in the last minutes. It's always a tough one to take. I think we deserved a bit better today, but at the end, football is all about details, and yeah, it is what it is.
What do you think City were missing out there today? Do you think that you had enough chances to kill that game off?
Yeah, I would say definitely that, killing the game, especially the first half. But even we had space to run, and we had chances to run in the second half because they were taking a bit more risks. And yeah, we lacked a bit that decision, the last pass, the finish, and yeah, we paid for it in the last minutes.
In terms of the title race, 6 points now behind Arsenal. Where do you think this leaves you in your title battle?
Well, in a more difficult position because 6 points, it's already something. But yeah, I've said it like a few weeks ago when we were 2 points behind them. We have to focus on ourselves. There's no point in looking at Arsenal or whoever if we don't do our job. So the last 2 games we didn't do our job. There's no point in looking at Arsenal. We need to focus on ourselves and win our games.
Quick turnaround, another game coming thick and fast midweek. How pivotal and crucial is it going to be to get 3 points from that one?
Yeah, after two draws, we definitely need to start winning games, and it's a good game against Brighton at home to try to do that. We'll rest, prepare that game, and try to go back to winning ways. We definitely need that.
These are City's last 8 Premier League results, and that ruthlessness we saw in that last run just halted a little bit in the last 2 back-to-back draws. Interesting to hear from Bernardo Silva saying, no point looking at Arsenal if we don't do our job.
Yeah, definitely, because you look at that winning results, and arguably anyone in the league would want them results, but it isn't good enough to kind of emulate what Arsenal are doing. So it is frustrating, and it is worse, especially when you concede in the last minute. But yeah, as long as they try and get back onto winning ways in the next game. And again, it's going to be difficult because now they have to wait for, not only do they have to beat Arsenal, they have to wait for them to drop points elsewhere. So they've made the job more difficult. But if there's any team that can catch them and believe they can catch them, it will be Man City. Yeah,
he described the way in which they played and said that they just really struggled to find that final moment, the last pass or the final finish. Well, I think he summed it up well. I think he was out there. The game did get stretched, and there's a team that when you're leading and you haven't put a team to the sword and get that second goal, then you're concerned, really, because it was too open. Chelsea had a lot of space, particularly down there, Chelsea's left side. They kept changing the ball out, and there was no midfield opposing
for City, and they had far too much time to turn on the ball and get at the back four. So, it became open, and City didn't use the space as well as they did when they had a lack of space, funny enough, in the first half. So I think they let themselves down there a little bit. But I think what he's saying is absolutely right, and that's what Pep would be saying in the dressing room. We've got to now concern ourselves of getting back on the horse. Still not a bad run. They're unbeaten for so many games. Yeah. But the problem is 6 points now, it takes the pressure off Arsenal. They can afford to draw a couple. And when they play that pivotal game, when they play Arsenal at home, they needed to be sort of 2 points away, breathing down Arsenal's neck. Now, will they get into that position? That is the key to the whole winning of the Premier League, I feel. And Arsenal now, it's Arsenal's to lose.
Yeah, but also that game, they needed to go into that game and Arsenal feeling they can't afford to lose, which they can now. They can go into that game, lose that game and still be 3 points ahead. So that's the kind of pressure it's taken off Arsenal going forward.
Yeah, just wondering about your own experience having been in a position like this before with Manchester City. I mean, you both said that run, anyone would love to have that run, but I guess it also shows us the standard City have, the fact that they know what it takes to get it over the line, that they look so disappointed. They look as if they've lost. I know it was a late goal, but that is what the faces look like.
Yeah, definitely. It always feels like that, especially when it's late on. But from my experience, we were more points behind a team that had more experience than Arsenal, so it can be done. But again, Arsenal, you would rather be in Arsenal's position because you have the points on the board and you have the opportunity to go on and win the league. But if there's one team that can catch Arsenal, it will be City.
Yeah, and
it's also a time, sorry, Jules, it's also a time over Christmas and New Year. So many games are packed in. You know, they haven't lost a game. It isn't like they've lost one and drawn one and, you know, it's catastrophe. They'll go again. They've got a lot on their plate and obviously... that's where Pep, you know, Doku didn't play. We thought he might start, but there's a rest for him for some reason, and then he'll go again in the midweek. So you've got to, as a manager, you've got to rest players and have the energy right.
Yeah, they go again midweek against Brighton. Arsenal play Liverpool. Big ones to come. But for match week 20, from Glenn and from Jolien and myself, we'll see you next time. Thank you for...